And we will be recording today. So Santana, you want to go ahead and get that started?
We're all set to
Please.
go.
Okay. All right. Today we are going to be focusing on aftershock, the HR continuity after the status quo has been shaken. For those that are new to Hacking HR, it is a global learning community and information exchange platform created to discuss all things of the intersection of the future of work, technology, organizations, and people, and the role of human resources to create a better workplace. Hacking HR is a space for learning, collaboration, ideation, and sharing. And our purpose is to create the best HR that ever existed by creating the best HR practices to enable organizations to adapt and thrive, which means they're able to be effective in solving today's and future's challenges. We're going to have this at the end, but you can also become a member by visiting hackinghr.io. The Seattle chapter is an open community, which means that anybody can join us. This chapter is self-managing community acting within the global Hacking HR brand groups. Once you become a member of Hacking HR, you get to be part of their Slack channel and start to communicate that way. And then you can also add Hacking HR Seattle, which is a channel within the channel. So, and we'll have that at the end as well for folks. Okay, so our leadership team, so Hacking HR Seattle used to have a chapter and they moved on and kind of created their own thing. I don't know how long, but I think it was last year. And I got connected because I know some people who've been doing this in Israel on the East Coast and Chicago. And I said, how do I get involved locally? And they said, you could help us restart it. And so when we restarted it, I got a chance to meet Santana and Josue and Stephen and Harry. And within a few months, we were able to, introduce ourselves, kind of figure out our roles, who's who, think about what do we want to do. And this is the result of all that work, which is today's first event. And we're already planning an event for next month. So please mark your calendars for that. Next month, it's going to discuss conversations about work or about race in the workplace. We're still designing that. And I think by being part of the community, we also want to be able to hear from you on what kind of events do we want to shape to better serve this community and have it be interactive. And then we'll have another event in August, maybe in August or September. For finalizing those dates. So I talked just a minute ago about wanting to make this interactivity. So our goal is to create a community around our shared purpose. So instead of just viewing, we want to make these events interactive. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms. I want you to share one thing that's been positive for you in the last 3 months. And then optional, we want you to encourage you to share contact information and schedule a virtual coffee to continue the conversation from today. So there's people who are just now joining. Now I can do this at the same time. Good. So I will just repeat this slide one more time because now that we're all here, I'm going to break everyone out just for a quick 5 minutes. Share one thing that's been positive for you in the last 3 months, and then encourage you to share contact information and schedule a virtual coffee. All right, let me go ahead and bring back to our share screen. How was that, everyone? Did you enjoy getting a chance to quickly interact with some folks? Did you notice a theme at all? Was there some commonality? Go ahead and we can just talk really quick. Maybe we'll just have a couple of people just share what's like a commonality in your room.
So Brian, I'll share. I think that one of the commonalities of finding the blessings was more time with family and friends. Those who are at home are actually home with their families and getting to really appreciating that time.
Oh, thank you, Tom. How about another theme or something that stood out? I'll share just one of the things I thought was kind of ironic that Mary shared was it took isolation for us to be closer together. And just seeing it, how much better communities and connections are forming through these last few months, and how we're able to really start to make shifts, like new things are happening faster than they ever have before. And it's probably because of the connections that we've been able to build. So thank you. Any other comments from the breakout rooms? Feel free.
Hey, Brian. Brian,
Yeah.
this is Sam. I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here. And this is great. But one of the things I found about the breakout rooms and just this whole process in general is that the artifice has dropped from folks quite a bit. We just allowed to be ourselves, both in wanting to reach to that point, plus also everything else is just kind of stripped away, all those titles and posturing and all that kind of stuff. And people are really reaching out from the heart and reaching out for the best of what's in that heart, hopefully more often than not. And that's been wonderful to not only have that experience, but recognize how universally desired and willing and the courage and willingness to do that that is present in these folks and in this room. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to queue up our amazing panelists and the bulk of our program. But before we begin, I want to encourage everyone to be active in the chat. One is please go onto the chat now and let us know three things. One, what's your role? Are you in HR? Are you in operations? Are you a consultant or an other? What size is your organization, small, medium, or large? And what industry are you in? So having this information is going to be able to help the panelists be able to know how to kind of craft their answers and their perspectives so we could better serve you today. And then during the panel, please chat your questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. I'm going to be monitoring all of those, and I'll take the questions that we're seeing come up the most and make sure that we have our panelists answer that. And then if there's things that you find are truth bombs or things that really resonate with you, put that in the chat as well, because that's going to be really good feedback, because the panelists will be able to read that and know that they can just kind of keep on, and it's good feedback. So please put that in there. All right. Okay. All right. So thank you for putting this in, everybody. And I am going to stop sharing and do this. I'm going to turn this over to Princess, who is our moderator, and she will begin our presentation and our conversation. So, Princess, go ahead and take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it. I am honored to be with you today and excited to moderate this panel, Aftershock, HR Continuity After the Status Quo Has Been Shaken. My name is Princess Ayers Stewart, as Brian mentioned, and I lead diversity, equity, inclusion for REI. I also am the owner of the Ayers Stewart Group. We create opportunity, connect people, and cultivate inclusion through consulting, wellness, and hospitality. I've spent the better part of 20 years in legal and corporate environments, promoting, really working to end discrimination and promoting fairness through EEO compliance, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's get started. I'd like to give each of our expert panelists an opportunity to give a 30-second introduction, and then we'll jump right into our panel discussion. Let's see, who would like to start? I think I was going to start with Dotsie. I was going to go alphabetical by first name. So Dotsie, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, sounds good. And thank you, Frances. And thank you, Brian, for having me. I'm looking forward to this. So like Frances, who's been a good friend for many years now, I've been a kind of a lifelong HR practitioner, though I fell into it somewhat accidentally by wanting to say, if I ran HR, I would change the policies and world in doing it this way. And suddenly I found myself in human resources trying to do just that. So I've led consulting teams and worked in every aspect of HR for a couple of decades now, starting at JP Morgan Chase in Chicago and New York, and in about 15 years ago relocated to do the same with Starbucks, and concluded my career about a month ago at T-Mobile after a dozen years, and have really found a new career in some ways because of just the changes and the things that are going on now, and I've been drawn back in. So thank you.
Next up by alphabet, we have Jennifer Becker, J before M.
Thank you, Princess. Good morning, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. And Brian, thank you. Santana, thank you. Other organizers for the opportunity to participate today. So I am not an HR person with an HR background. My background is operations and strategy. And I'm really glad to be joining you all to be able to sort of represent that point of view in today's conversation around the topic. So my background is primarily in healthcare leadership. I worked in Minnesota, University of Minnesota Hospitals and Clinics, as well as at Seattle Children's Hospital most recently, where I was the vice president for ambulatory services, which is basically everything outpatient. I was also a faculty member in the Lean Leader Development Program and did a lot of just leadership development work inside of Seattle Children's, including I was also a faculty member in the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Training Program for leaders at Seattle Children's. So I left Children's a year ago and I co-founded a new company called Culture Abilities. And I've now taken on sole leadership of that company. My founder, my co-founding partner, who's fantastic, is with COVID, we've just had some transitions in terms of where that's going. So we work with organizations to help them with culture, align culture with the purpose of their organization, and then how you do it. So using my lean background around principles for operationalizing culture.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. That's great. And last but not least, Michael.
Thank you, Princess. Look, it's an honor to be here and speak to all of you. I've been in HR for a few years now. It's been a while. I started my HR career in large companies like GE and Pepsi, and then had some great opportunities to get into tech. I was at Quest, which is the phone company. I ran HR for H&R Block, which was a fascinating experience, 110,000 people and 10,000 locations. Came back to the Midwest where I grew up, worked with Microsoft. So had an HR role there at Microsoft for about 6 years, and then ran HR for a company called DocuSign, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, for about 3.5 years. And then as well as ran HR for a company called Parallels, which is a tech company with most of our employees in Russia. So really been blessed to have a great and really varied HR career in a lot of different industries and working with people all over the US and all over the world. And I recently left a role where I was running HR for another tech company. And so my goal this summer is to spend as much time with my kids as I can before they head back off to college and so forth. And I've set up a consulting organization. I also am a professor at Seattle Pacific University. So I teach in the graduate school, in the business school, and I just got done teaching a class on diversity, which was fantastic timing given what's going on. And I'm just started teaching a class this summer on labor relations and unions. So really been blessed to have this opportunity and want to share and help other people in their careers.
That's great, Michael. Thanks for calling out areas near and dear to my heart for sure, and definitely timely for this conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about, I'm just thinking about the sort of the ripples of COVID-19 and the things that it's impacting: travel, gatherings, in-person learning, supply chain, technology, a smaller economy and market, increased spending on disease prevention, race talk you mentioned, expectations of your company and CEO, and backlashes. Those things aside, we're going to start on a positive note and a hug. What encouragement do you have for, those little things aside, what encouragement do you have for leading change? Who would like to start? We can still go in alphabetical order. I don't want to be too strict, but if something's jumping out.
I'd love to jump in. Won't worry about alphabetically. And thank you for acknowledging what is going on, because I think it's important at least to acknowledge it. And much of that, I think, is also resulting in positive outcomes too. It's all in what you focus on. When you think about encouragement for leading change, one of the things I just think about is what is the driver. And I think in general, whether it's the aftershock we're in now or just generally speaking, is change needs, in my view, needs to be an outcome of something else. And so what is creating that environment? Because a lot of times we'll think about change for change's sake, or just it's time to change something. So I just think about it like that. And I use metaphors a lot. And in my sports metaphor, the best basketball players always talk about excelling when they just sort of let the game come to them instead of trying to create this and create that. They sort of respond to what's happening around them and react really, really well. And I think that change for many people should be like that. Let's understand what's happening around us and support it. The changes that I think we can take advantage of right now are in this moment would be these long-held perspectives that many, many leaders have had about remote work and flexibility and things like that, that many people have never been supportive of. And now, out of need, many people are. And so now it might be, how do we memorialize that and keep that going? Because without some reinforcing of it, it's very easy to sort of slip back insidiously back into what's comfortable. So that would be a change that I think could work.
That's a good point. We've all kind of had to act our way into a new way of thinking, to borrow a lean principle, Jennifer. And so now we're practiced at it. And we all, to some degree, survived it or are surviving it, some better than others. But just knowing we have the ability to do that may create new ideas around how we embrace change going forward. That's great. What about you, Jennifer or Michael?
Yeah, I'd love to add on. So Dottie, I love the analogy, or I love the metaphor you just used about sports, right? And the game coming to the exceptional athlete and like flowing with that. And so what I want to add to what Dottie just said and to speak to is, so what I've learned about, so in this particular moment in time, I'm experiencing way more intensity of feeling than I have before. And I hear that from a lot of the people that I work with. And so I think the encouragement that I want to offer is just encouragement to myself and all of us in terms of my learnings in this period of intensity, right? The aftershock, the ongoing shocks, not only of COVID, but of, they're sort of revealing, the peeling away and making visible the institutionalized racism that exists in our society and in this, and acknowledging that the experiences that I have, all of our experiences are different, right? So just there is more intensity. How we each relate to that is going to be slightly different for all of us. So what I'm learning is that fear gets activated pretty intensively for myself, for my family, for the people that I talk to, and that's okay. That to actually be able to receive the game, to let the game come to me, I have to learn to tolerate my own feelings that would cause me to not be still, to allow the game to come to me, but to respond in a way that actually interrupts that. So what I'm learning about that is that fear is not a problem. The intensity of emotion arising is not a problem. It actually is the work to be able to stay present in the face of change. And so as an operations leader, I know that right now, having my HR colleagues help to normalize that, help to support that, the bringing of sort of emotional courage and and emotional, and like the sort of conversations around emotional intelligence as being relevant to the workplace, as actually being fundamental and critical. The support to senior leaders to create those spaces. I just think you all are in an incredibly, you're incredibly positioned right now to serve your organizations and the people in your organizations in a way that I don't ever see that's been called for before in terms of the amount of energy and intensity that exists right now. So that's what I want to encourage you all and myself is the space and normalcy of feeling. And that difficult feelings are not a problem. We get to choose how we relate to them.
That's really great feedback, Jennifer. Thank you. I love that sort of that concept of fear, like name it to tame it, and not make it bad or wrong.
Yeah.
And to embrace it, I think, is a powerful piece of encouragement for us all. I really appreciate that. And last but not least, Michael, what's your words of encouragement for us?
Yeah. So encouragement. Number one. We have a tendency at times to think we need to know what the answer is. And the first thing I would encourage you to recognize is that you don't need to know the answer. You know, what people need right now is authentic and genuine leadership. They need people who will listen. They need people who will partner with them on how we navigate going forward. You know, and that is so critical, to not think we have to come up with the right approach and not be willing to change that approach if new information happens. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's number one, is just, I would encourage all of you in your roles, no matter what those roles are, to just take a deep breath and say, look, it's okay that we don't know exactly what the answer is, and be honest about that with your people. The second you do, what you'll discover is that it opens up communication. It opens up people to now start talking, and you can get to an answer that I think is an outcome. The second thing in terms of encouragement is, you know, and I'll speak as an HR leader. I know not all of you are in HR, so this will be a little bit of an HR perspective, but it has always been our mandate in HR to understand the people implications of our business, to ensure that we create environments where people are treated with dignity and with respect. That has never changed. That has always been what we were supposed to be doing. And I think when you have times like this where inequities get highlighted, it just, again, talks about and creates the opportunity for you to weigh in and look at all the things that your organization is doing and look for ways that those things can be improved. You know, and that's something that all of us can do every single day. Mm-hmm. We don't need to have answers to global issues like pandemics. We don't need to be able to solve wholesale cultural issues within our country. What we do need to do is be able to make the environments that we work in inclusive and treat people with respect, and all of us can do that. And I would really encourage you to lean in on that, because a lot of times, as Jennifer was saying, and as Dacia was saying, people are struggling right now for a lot of reasons. A lot of it is fear. A lot of it is the unknown. A lot of it is uncertainty. A lot of it is just a sense of discomfort. And so we have an opportunity to go in and make a difference. And that can be in large things, major wholesale changes, but it can also be in small things that you do and can control every single day. So, I mean, I really do think the key principles that we've always been asked to do around people are more important than ever. You know, and that's great news. That's a wonderful opportunity.
I love that, Michael. It's almost like getting back to basics. You know, we think we have to sort of do something new or reinvent something because the times have changed, but sometimes it's just kind of doubling down or kind of getting ourselves, you're reimagining, but you're also grounded in some principles that you've always been grounded in. I love that there's no right way. It's a freeing thought, and oftentimes you don't want to get it wrong. And that creates some limitations. So to just be honest and know that you don't have to have all the answers is some really great, it's really just the truth, right? No one has all the answers. That's great. Thank you guys so much. So I'm going to move us on to our next question. And you guys kind of touched on some things, but what are the first 3 tactical things or measurements you would focus on right now? Knowing that you don't have to know it all. With that backdrop, but what are a few things that readily come to mind to kind of focus on for right now, just to get folks grounded?
Should we follow protocol, Dotsie, and you can go first?
I was actually pretty comfortable with I thought Jennifer might have had something that she was saying there, but a couple of things I would say in terms of that is the idea. I love what you said, Michael, about not needing to know everything, but know that there are some great tools out there, and this is probably a good time, and people have been using this pandemic, which has given some people extra hours to invest in reading and invest in understanding tools and how to equip leaders. And so this is really one of those times where you can do more of that to get yourselves, whether you're an HR professional or someone who's leading people. Because to me, the best leaders really don't have to be HR professionals. The best leaders are using those principles no matter what groups they're leading and what teams they're leading. And good people leadership skills by nature is inclusive. It is by nature caring about the individuals and paying a lot of attention to it. So in terms of some of that stuff, I think it's really really turning on your sensors even more than you have before. When we start coming back into these places, recognizing that people have really been through something and not moving too quickly. Less about letting the game come to you, but just really letting people kind of feel their way back into it.
That's great. That is great. Go, Jennifer.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, there were the 3 things that stand out to me right now, and there are so many others, but these are the 3 I would say from kind of wearing the lens of or holding the point of view of sort of operations and strategy and the partnerships that you have with operational leaders. One of the first things that I was thinking about is I think this is an opportunity to reignite purpose, so that what we know is when people feel connected to the purpose of their organization, right? Like it's in service. There's a reminder about why are we each making the choice that we do every day to show up in our jobs. So helping to connect people there is an opportunity for us to come together and there a sense of alignment around the direction of an organization. So that's one of the first things is I would encourage you to, like, if you have access to senior leaders, to the CEO, like to be encouraging people to start with purpose. The second thing is really related to what Dotsie was just saying. So if you don't already feel really educated about psychological safety, educate yourself. The science of psychological safety and why that is so critical is really important. And so if you don't know about that, educate yourself. Second of all is then I would start to think about measuring. One of the first things that I would be doing is doing little pulse checks on the team that I work with and supporting my operational leaders. So making sure like you can help educate them if they don't know about psychological safety and why that's important, right? It's the number one requirement for team effectiveness. If you don't have that, teams will automatically be undermined. And that basically means in a group environment that people feel safe to speak up. They feel like they can say what they can bring their full selves, and they're not going to be like ostracized for the group. And so what I would be doing is I would be doing pulse checks immediately at the start of each meeting. And you can do, Amy Edmondson, who's a researcher out of Harvard, has a great tool available. It's called the 5-minute psychological safety survey. And you can just do quick pulse checks to see like, how is a team doing at the start of each meeting? And so if you need to, or at the end, you can figure out how you want to use that. But it gives you quick data that you can respond to. And sometimes, for example, you might have a meeting agenda that you realize you have to forego because in the moment, there's something really like people are feeling a lot. There's something really occupying people's attention that you want to tend to from a human perspective. And that actually is one of the ways we start to, you know, I mean, we all know this. You know what it feels like to be in a group where there is that sense of vulnerability. And then the third thing that I would suggest is I think it's also a great opportunity for us to start to think about daily company practices or team-based practices that help us ground the sense of purpose and create psychological safety. So what, for example, is there a daily ritual or a daily huddle? Look at how you can create structure, as Princess was saying at the beginning, act your way into a new way of behaving. So you're mindful and intentional about what you're doing right now. I mean, I think these are good principles always. And in this particular moment, I think it's even more important, particularly the piece around psychological safety.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really great point, Jennifer, around that, and where, to your point earlier, around where fear just may be permeating things, that sense of safety is going to be even more important. And I think it's probably going to manifest as a felt need for most people as we're coming into this. That's fantastic. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, just to add on to what was said before, and I think you know, I think both what Dotsie and Jennifer said are spot on. And so let me go maybe a slightly different direction, because I don't know that I would add any more value to what they've already said. There's one reality that I think is really important, is that a lot of organizations, and I wouldn't presume to know your organization, because what you measure is going to be different depending on what you do. If you're serving patients, if you are producing products, whatever that may be. But the reality that we're also facing at the same time is that our businesses or organizations are struggling. You have an economic impact right now that's happening, and that could mean that you end up having to lay off employees. It could mean that you are looking out at a forecast, and you may not have the money to invest in the things that you wanted to invest. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you're thinking about what to measure, in addition to what was already said before, is I think about this model that says, what do I control? What do I influence? And what do I not control? And there's a whole bunch of stuff right now that falls into the I don't control it category. So I think it's important to look at, what do we do control? Because if you're in an organization that's looking ahead and going, look, the forecast that we had in place around our business is not going to be there. That's going to impact our ability to employ people. Then I think one of our opportunities is to go in and make sure that we are successful at what it is that we are doing. And that could mean that if you're serving patients, you go back and take a look at, what can we do to better serve our customers? What can we do to better serve our patients? What can we do to improve what we do have control over? Because one of the things that Jennifer mentioned around psychological safety and purpose is also meaningful work. Is the work I'm doing, can I connect the dots between the work I'm doing every day and the ability for our organization to be successful? To the extent that you can connect those dots, people are going to feel more engaged and have more purpose in what they're doing. You know, and there's a tendency that we have to want to explore, and we should have all the conversations in the world about major impacts that are in life that's happening right now and how it's impacting us in the workplace. Absolutely. But at the same time, you have to go back and look at what your organization does and make sure you're doing it really well. Because if we don't do that well, if we don't serve our customers well, if we don't improve our processes, then we're not going to be in a situation where organizations are healthy enough to make the investments that we're going to need in the future. And all of our people that work for us right now and with us are depending on us to make sure our business and our organization is viable and successful. So, I think that model of control, influence, not control, given the fact that you're all working in completely different places with very different dynamics, that's a good tool and set of principles that you can use to just go focus in on the things that you can impact every day.
That's great, Michael. That's really fantastic. All of our panelists, I think I'm hearing some themes and really some takeaways of, Michael, I think you talked about sort of assessing where your org is and being in that reality, right? There's some real business considerations to think about. I think an overarching theme I'm hearing is tending to the needs of our people, and that being super critical now, particularly as HR folks, as it's always been, but also really being intentional in that through this. I'm hearing also to use this as an opportunity to improve. So to be crystal clear about kind of what your business is up to, but use this as an opportunity to improve. I'm hearing themes of adaptability, creativity, resilience, just some really good insights here. I'm going to transition us now, and I think we're running on time. Keep me honest, Brian. I should be shifting here to Q&A.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're going to start. Kyle had a really good question, and that was, how do we encourage, facilitate human connection with the stresses of the day? We've got understanding institutionalized racism, COVID fears. How do we set up the space to do that?
Well,
Who wants to take that one? Go, Dottie.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of that is, it goes really back to what Jennifer was saying about psychological safety. I think you've got to look at what has been the relationship that leaders have had. And again, this shouldn't sit in the HR leaders bucket. This is something that all leaders are going to need to do and get better at. But it is, did you have a trusting environment where people could talk about it? Because one thing that has happened, and it's been happening really over the years, it's no longer work-life balance, it's work-life blend. Work has become very much a part of what people do at home and have been for the last several years. And likewise, home has crept into work for people over the several years. Well, now we're in a place where that bridging and that balancing act and that sort of, I don't want to say code switching, but that whole thing of bifurcating these things is over. And so leaders need to, in my view, be able to help folks have an environment where it is okay to talk about what you're experiencing. And perhaps it is even setting aside some time to do that. And I would recommend, and this would be a very specific one, don't do it so early in the morning. It's very easy to fall into that morning stand-up to plan out the day, and it's a part of agile development and all of that sort of thing. But now with the environments and people coming back to work and even still working remotely, people need to balance their home life, getting kids together, many other things in a different way. So find, I would say, a different time to do that. And the way you do that is by asking people what's going to work best for doing that. But I think you create that space by that environment of trust. And if you haven't had it, you will need to begin by sharing about yourself as a leader, opening yourself up, being vulnerable yourself. And as you do that, your employees will see that signal as, okay, I can be.
I love what you just said, Dotsie. And I often talk about that as like leaders go first, right? So as HR team members, you all helping the leaders in your organizations right now understand that they go first. They have to model vulnerability, as Michael was talking about, right? The significance of vulnerability right now. That's actually how you start to create psychological safety. So I would be helping leaders understand the role that they can play to help to establish that. And I love the question, Chris. Like for me, the stress of the day is the connection opportunity. It's not a separate thing. That is the terrain to actually explore feeling. And I know for myself that my experience is connection is a felt, I feel it, right? Like I can talk about connection, but I feel it like bodily. And I know that when I experience someone talking to me from their mind, their ideas, versus someone really being with me in their vulnerability, right? There's a congruence I feel between what they're saying and how it feels. That's the work that I am encouraging myself and other leaders to be doing right now. Because without that, your leaders are not actually going to show up vulnerably. Like, it has to be real. I can't just pretend to be vulnerable. I actually have to be vulnerable, and that feels hard sometimes, not always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree, Jennifer. I think that's absolutely spot on, that you have to be authentic and genuine. One of the things that I think that I've learned from working all over the world is that, and I'll just speak to an American culture, right, that we're all part of, which is we have this Western culture that somehow you've got to start a meeting on time and you got to have an agenda and you got to dive into it. So many other cultures around the world are so much better at having, you know, interaction time and having time where it's just you get to know each other before you get into business. So one of the things that I did when this COVID thing first happened is I set up a meeting with my team, and it wasn't first thing in the morning, Dotsie, because I'm never awake at early in the morning, like, you know, 10 o'clock at night, I'm all in, 10, you know, 9 a.m., not so much. But one of the things that we did is we set up a call, and all we did, there was no business allowed. The first week, all we talked about was some tiger show that everybody was watching on Netflix. Like it was the dumbest show. I watched like one episode. It was like, you know, but everyone and then there was other shows that came up, and you know, I can see people laughing and engaging because those things are so important. You know, don't resist sometimes this almost maniacal urge we have to get into business and be productive and get things done. And just schedule time to do nothing but talk about whatever the heck people want to talk about and what's going on. Because as we are out of the workplace, that's the thing that we're missing. I mean, we're not less productive. In fact, in a lot of ways, we're more productive because we don't have commutes, and half the time we don't shower, and we just wake up and start working, and, you know, and we don't have the artificial barriers that we used to have. But we miss the interaction. We miss the social part. We miss the just chit chat as we run into people in the hallways. And so be purposeful about putting that in place, you know, and watch yourself as a leader that, you know, we've been trained for however many years to be these type A, get stuff done, produce. We're going to have to pump the brakes a little bit, and we're going to have to say, let's take some time to just kind of talk and let's engage people. Because once you get their hearts and minds, as Jennifer was saying, then they're all in on the stuff that you ask them to do later. But I think that's something that we have to retrain ourselves. And I would tell you, you know, I've been scolded many times around the world for going in with an American approach to go, instead of just chilling out, taking a deep breath and just talking about stuff. So, I mean, that's one thing I think we could do differently that will help build that connection.
Well, thank you, everybody. This has been, I hope this panel and this program has been powerful to you. So please, you know, wave to the presenter, say thank you, or make a comment in the chat. Really appreciate everyone showing up for our very first event. And I've got a call to action for everybody. So let me go ahead and pull this up.
Can we get a shout out for Princess for running this as well in Santana?
Yes.
Thank you all. Nice job.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. This has been fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
You did. Thank you all.
Yes,
Great.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Our call to action, we talked about this earlier. Become a member. You're invited to become a member of Hacking HR. Just go to hackinghr.io. Join the Slack community, add the Hacking Seattle channel. We would love on that Seattle channel any feedback about today's event on how we can make the next one better. If there's anybody who wants to be part of the planning committee, or if you have a network of speakers that you think would greatly serve our community, let us know. Number 3, hold the date for our next online event, which will be July 21st at 10 a.m. And then connect with the panelists. So Dotsie, Jennifer, Michael, and Princess, their information is there. They would love to continue the conversation or follow the work that they do. I was very lucky to been able to plan this with them, and I was excited for you by just knowing how talented they were. And it was just amazing today to see all the good things that they did. So thank you, everybody.